So my name's Forrest Hardy. I'm with the Public Works Department of Minneapolis, project manager for 37th Avenue Northeast Reconstruction. This is a joint project between Minneapolis and Columbia Heights, it being on the city border of those two cities. We were last here about a year ago to kind of kick off the project and introduce the engagement events that came up in the last winter and this past spring. We had a couple of successful events and recommended a preferred layout, though we did receive some feedback from this neighborhood organization and our bicycle advisory committee on the trail alignment. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board a little bit to try to make some improvements to the layout, make it a little bit easier for people that are Minneapolis residents in the south to cross over to that trail on the north side. So this first slide here is just an overview of the general section of the project. The street narrows from a 44-foot street today down to a 26-foot street, which will it's pretty narrow as far as streets in the city go. It's almost like a parkway feel with those wide 9-foot boulevards on either side and a narrow street without parking on either side. The trail gap will be filled from Central Avenue to Stinson Boulevard with a 10-foot trail in the north portion of the project. And then the wider boulevards provide space for green infrastructure such as stormwater infiltration, which will have to meet the new Minneapolis ordinance requirements for stormwater. We'll obviously go to all the pedestrian ramps, upgrade those with the project, it being a full street reconstruction. That's part of the scope. We'll also be doing bump outs, curb extensions along a lot of the side streets where we can make those work. We'll provide a 2-stage crossing with the medians that we're introducing along the project. There are 9 medians in total to help people from the south side residents make it to that north side trail in a 2-stage crossing. And then we'll be exploring raised trail crossings at 3 locations to improve some safety of the trail across major streets. The project will accommodate existing and future transit in the corridor. There's existing local bus service today. There's also in the Metro Transit's Network Next plan, future BRT that uses partially part of the corridor that we'll need to accommodate. It improves the intersection of 37th Place for visibility and pedestrian safety, and also squares up that intersection. I mentioned the curb extensions that are added to shorten pedestrian crossing distances, and provides trail and sidewalk crossing of the railroad tracks where there's a sidewalk gap today. And now Heather will take a little bit of time to go over the new proposed layout.
Thanks, Forrest. Hello, I am Heather Kienitz. I am a multimodal traffic engineer with SEH. I've been working on this project along with my colleague Shane, who is also at the meeting today. And we will start on the west end of the project and just walk through this so that you can see the layout. And if you have questions, I don't know if your process is to hold them until the end or during, whichever you prefer works for me. So if there's a hand raised and I missed it, perhaps Forrest or Shane can help me see that, and I can pause for folks if need be. So starting on the west end of the project near Central Avenue, you can see the lane arrangement at the intersection.
We can't see your screen yet, Heather.
Oh, I shared it, but I guess that didn't work. I'll try it again.
Maybe Shane will have to stop sharing. There we go.
Okay, is it working now? It says I'm sharing. Okay. Okay, good. Now everyone can see. Thank you. All right. So starting on the west end of the project, this is the Central Avenue intersection with 37th. At this location, you can see The width of the roadway here as you approach the intersection. Right now, the layout shows 1 lane receiving for eastbound traffic and 3 lanes headed westbound. And then you can see the sidewalk on the south side and the trail on the north side. And the green, of course, is opportunities for greening, landscaping, green infrastructure, et cetera. This lane arrangement is currently being discussed by both cities, and that will be finalized and determined over the next month or so. So it's not completely formalized yet as the final arrangement at the intersection, but it is under discussion because, of course, the north side of the corridor is Columbia Heights and they are a project partner. This trail will connect across Central Avenue to the new trail on 37th on the other side. And then, of course, the sidewalks will connect as well. And so that will be done with modifications at this intersection as needed to accommodate that. Then as we head a little bit to the east, I'm gonna work my way over toward Polk Avenue or Polk Street, sorry. And I live in South Minneapolis, so I'm very used to the avenues being north-south and the streets being east-west. So forgive me if I do that a few times. So Polk Street Northeast is one of our first locations. Forrest mentioned that we added medians at a variety of locations along the corridor to facilitate improved crossing for residents from the south to get to the trail and back. And then at Polk, this also provides a nice connection to the bike boulevard for people utilizing the bike boulevard. Also provides a crossing of the tracks as well. So multitude of good reasons to have additional facilitated crossing at this location. So that's the Polk Street intersection. The median on both sides is wide enough to be refuge for pedestrian, allows people to cross one direction of traffic at a time, pause, cross another direction of traffic. So it really gives that nice 2-stage crossing, which facilitates a nice, safer crossing for people walking or rolling. And then as we head a little bit further east along the corridor, you can see the sidewalk continues back, with the road as we narrow back up again from the median width. Now we're back to those 11-foot travel lanes. And then you add 2 feet on each side for gutter to get to that 26 that Forrest shared with you. And in here, you can see those 9-foot boulevards on both sides of the street, providing that space for potential green infrastructure options. The city of Minneapolis has a new green infrastructure ordinance that you're probably familiar with. And that will require a certain amount of stormwater treatment and also be opportunity to improve water quality and work through infiltration and filtration opportunities too. I'm going to head a little bit further. Now, as you get closer to the east, this is the edge of the drawing, and then I'll jump down to the next level of this. We're at Fillmore. At the Fillmore location, we have another one of those median locations where we've added it to facilitate that north-south crossing. And again, Fillmore also provides some good connectivity across the tracks to the south. There's also that connection to the Grand Rounds, which is important to people cycling and walking and using those trail connections throughout the city. So this median here at this location on both sides provides the same type of crossing that we showed at the Polk Street crossing. And then I'm going to jump down and slide over to my match line. So this matches up with where we were near on just the east side of Fillmore. And we keep proceeding and we're back again to that 26-foot wide roadway here where we're outside of that median area. And we have crossings at a number of locations too, where we've got those pedestrian ramps to cross and gain access to the trail at a number of locations as well that were added as part of the project. And then we get over to Buchanan. And at this location, again, we're adding the medians on both sides of Buchanan, allowing for a 2-stage crossing. One thing that will be refined in this drawing, you can see this driveway at this location at 1317, 1325 has the median in front of it. We need to shorten up this median so that that access is provided at that location. So one of those design details that we need to update on this image. Something that I'm sure some people that, especially if you live there, you might notice that, but otherwise just something to keep in mind that there are some of these details that we'll be updating as we go along. Then as we continue, we head back toward Lincoln. We've got a crossing here at Lincoln, crossing the street. We're in that narrow street section, which is really nice for pedestrians. It really limits the exposure, this reduction in the width of the road from 44 feet to 26. It's a nice size reduction, as Forrest mentioned, that parkway feel, especially with the green infrastructure opportunities and greening on both sides, right up to the street, and then a setback trail as well as sidewalk. And then we proceed a little bit further and we get to the signalized intersection at Johnson. So at this location, we have the trail on the north side still, right? It continues all the way on the north side, but the sidewalk here, you'll notice that we've gotten down to 6 feet for the green boulevard space here. The reason we narrowed that up was because the resident at this location expressed concern about not wanting the trail that close to their home. And you can see that their building is very close to the edge of the right of way, their house building. So we instead just kept the sidewalk on the same alignment rather than pulling it back any closer to the home. So that's why we've narrowed up the boulevard at this location. Then on Johnson Street on the south leg, as we tie into the existing sidewalks there, we've pulled the sidewalks back. So we have the sidewalk no longer at back a curb here, right at the intersection. They're pulled back a bit from the street and then they tie back into the sidewalks on Johnson. Then we've hit our very first crossing location on Johnson Street, where we've got that raised crossing shown on the plans. Right now we have 3 of these locations shown. This one at Johnson is still needs to be finalized in the final design process. One of the considerations we have when we're designing a crossing like this is the street design speed for Johnson and the fact that it's a through street and signalized at this location. So we would need to finalize and understand the impact of that design speed on the design of the raised crossing. As your speeds increase on your street, it's more challenging to affect much change in terms of this design of this raised median. So we're still evaluating that based on MnDOT state aid standards to understand if this is a good application at this location. So for now we're showing it, but it's still under evaluation. As we cross the intersection here, we continue the trail with our 9-foot boulevard space and head to the edge of this drawing here. And on the south end again, we've widened back out from that 6 feet here by 3664, and we're at 9 feet here. So we head back with the 9 feet, and then I'm going to jump to the next page where I go back. Oops, sorry. Here we go. As we're headed towards Hayes, we are, from Johnson, we're narrowed back up to the 26-foot roadway. And then as we approach Hayes, we again have those medians that we've added at the intersection to facilitate that more comfortable, safer crossing for people walking and biking between the trail and the sidewalk and residents on both sides of the corridor. And the lanes, of course, in between accommodate the necessary travel lane width. And then from a design perspective, you need some space on the right and space on the left per the design standards. And then we get to narrow back up again as we head to the east to 26 feet. And again, we continue that wider boulevard to provide space for things like tree trenches or other best management practices for stormwater treatment, grass, other opportunities here. And then getting close to Hart here. So as we approach Hart, we've got the 26-foot wide roadway, and we get to Hart and we open up to provide a left turn lane onto Hart. And opposing that left turn lane in the other direction, we have a median that we've added to facilitate crossing at this location, where we also have a transit stop. We have transit stops at the near side of each intersection at Hart and Hollywood. And Hart, this median is extended back farther to discourage anyone using the Speedway driveway on the west from the westbound lane, either going to or from the westbound lane. So this will block any motorists from turning in and out here. And then another thing that this median will do is provide what we call a hardened center line, so that if you have a transit vehicle stopped in the travel lane in this location, they won't, the motorists behind that transit vehicle stopped for a pickup won't try to sneak around that bus and get out of being delayed a little bit longer by a stopped bus picking up people, and then create a safety challenge at the intersection. So that's what this will also do. And this was extended in order to do those two things with the driveway and the transit stop. And then my Zoom screen, I have to move you over here. And then you can see we have the two driveways to Speedway. We've also, I think we've probably told you this, but we've met with them as well to just make sure that, we're cooperating with the property owners to understand their access and how they circulate, and that this works for them. And then in this location, we also have a bit of a wider boulevard in this location, as well as we just use the right of way that we have in this space. Did I forget to talk about? I did. I'm going to back up a little bit to Hayes. One thing I didn't mention here. At Hayes, we also have transit stops at Hayes. And another thing we did at this location is we added platforms for, or not platforms, but bus stop locations for people that are paved at both the stop locations. So this is a 9-foot wide concrete pad for people to stand on both corners here as well. And then I'll go back to Hart. So we'll hit the match line on the other side here. As we transition to the east toward the railroad tracks, we do change from the striped out median space to what we call a two-way center left turn lane. And that is shown at this location here as we're approaching 37th place. Here we've got that last Speedway driveway, and then we've got the driveway to Top Value, and then we've got the left turn to 37th place. So this will facilitate a motorist needing to turn into these 3 different locations in this street as well. So at 37th place, this probably looks a little different to you than what it looks today. We've bent it in more, we've narrowed it up, made it a more clear and narrow intersection, so that the right of way for the motorists or people walking, biking, etc. through here is a little more clear. It's not such a kind of no man's land. When you have those flared access points, it can become a little bit confusing. People want to drive around the left turner or sneak around the right turner, and then there might be someone trying to cross. So this narrowing of this and trying to bring it in slightly more perpendicular helps with that. This is our next raised crossing location. I might have missed talking about that at Hart as well, now that I think about it, but this is a raised crossing location where we take the trail and we have a raised crossing. We also have it set back from the intersection. This is the stop bar. This allows a motorist approaching it to see the raised crossing, pause here for people using the trail, and then come across it and wait here at the stop bar location to address traffic. That way, when they're making their turning movement at this location, they're able to do it in 2 stages without trying to do 2 things at once. So that pulled back really helps with that. Part of this alignment of the trail helps because of the fact that we're connecting to the trail along Stinson to the north. So this road along 37th Place will connect a trail to the Stinson Trail to the north, and then we'll still continue the trail along 37th. So we have these 2 options at this location. We also have potential to cross at the street at this location. Then as we approach the railroad tracks, we've bent out the trail so that people rolling are able to cross at a slightly more perpendicular angle, and also everybody using the trail can more easily, it's less of a skew. They can look to their right, they can look to their left and see better when they're crossing. This keeps bike tires and other wheeled vehicles from getting caught into the tracks as well at that crossing. This requires a small variance because of the design speed of the trail curve. So it will require people to slow down at this location to make that curve. But we don't anticipate any challenges with getting that variance to do that on the trail. And then at the other side of the railroad tracks, we also have the sidewalk continuing across the rail crossing as well. This is on the outside of the gates. So the gates are only over the street. So people will be crossing right at this location across the tracks at this location on the sidewalk. And then as we approach the Stinson Boulevard intersection, we have the trail coming up and ending at that location. And then we have that sidewalk connecting into the sidewalk network to the south. And then we provide all of the crosswalk markings at the intersection, as well as a left turn lane and a through and a shared right turn lane. And at this location, we did a lot of traffic operations analysis to understand the impacts of what lane geometry we had here going all the way back to Hart, to make sure that we didn't have challenges with stacking that would create an unsafe condition for people at the track location. And so we were able to determine that the queuing is going to rarely extend back here. And if it does, people can then, there'll be bars for people to stop at this location and this location. And then sometimes, which I'm sure you're familiar with, people will turn onto 37th Place and use that. And then we know also there's a transit route that utilizes 37th as well. I'm just going to pop back to Hart because I didn't address that raised crossing at Hart. So I'll just show that real quick. I didn't point that out. This is another one of those our third raised crossing that I forgot to mention. We are again evaluating these with final design, but this location, as well as 37th Place, are at stop controlled intersections, whereas Johnson's at a signal. So there's a little bit of a different design consideration for those. Columbia Heights is really excited about trying these raised crossings and seeing how they operate and work for the trail users. So I think it's likely that the Hart and 37th Place one will remain. At the BAC meeting, a question came up about trail striping. We were able to talk with Columbia Heights since the BAC meeting on Tuesday, and they said that that they would be open to the idea of striping the trail with the legend markings that show the outline of a pedestrian and the outline of a bicyclist. So those stencils on the trail, so that people understand that it's a shared use facility.
Thanks, Heather. And I saw a question in the chat about what is a raised crossing, and it's generally, you could think of it as a speed bump for vehicles, and makes the trail kind of even with the sidewalk for pedestrians and bicyclists. So they don't have to go down and meet the roadway. They just have to continue at the same level as the sidewalk or the trail. And do you want to jump back into the slides?
Sure.
Just have about one more minute here.
I have a question if we're capable for that.
You have a question?
Yeah, just on the central end, is striping on the other side of Central at all in scope, as that right turn onto Central from 37th can be pretty tricky? And then also, is there a plan for any like raised, or I don't know, like the green stripe bike path striping to go across Central on that bike path to the Stinson, or not the Stinson, the other side of that?
Yeah. We're still kind of working out those details about the Central Avenue intersection with Columbia Heights and with MnDOT. Likely the approach lanes just west of Central would maybe be part of that restriping. And I'd like to see green conflict markings across Central to just note that trail crossing as well. But I don't know exactly which agency would be maintaining those. So it'd have to be determined by that agency.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So obviously, the trail alignment is retained on the north side in this layout. We think there are some advantages to that. The main advantage is network connectivity with the trail west of Central, and then the trail along Stinson on either end. It provides direct connections to these trails without having to jog across the street for those trail users. It does require some adjustment to the roadway center line. So the center line of the street would be shifting about 4 feet south of where it is today. However, the southern curb is actually shifting up 5 feet. So the sidewalk ends up in about the same place, and the boulevard is much wider than it is today on the south side. Let's see here. Sorry that you can't read my slide because somebody posted something in the chat. The north side trail impacts will require a retaining wall for much of the slope section, which is kind of the central portion of the project. And those walls will be owned and maintained by Columbia Heights. I saw the question in the chat. The construction timeline would be 2023 construction. It hasn't really been determined if it's a 1 season or 2 season project, though. I don't know yet. If Shane, you might know or have some indication of if it would be a 2 season project.
Actually, maybe that's a good one for you to answer, Justin. Like Forrest was saying, I think it's still up in the air. I know we're going to have a bunch of private utility work relocating in 22, with the majority of the roadway work happening in 23. It's just a matter of if they can complete the roadway work in 2023. I think is yet to be determined. Do you have anything to add to that, Justin?
No, that's correct. I think we're still analyzing the timing and the scope of work that needs to happen in 1 season compared to 2 seasons. So we're still looking at that.
I saw the speed limit question come up. I think at this time we would be retaining 30-mile-an-hour speed. It's kind of a question between the two cities as to what that speed limit needs to be, but I think at this time it's 30 miles per hour. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I guess what isn't like finalized in this plan right now?
Yeah. Largely the plan is finalized, and we'll be bringing it through to City Council for a vote early next year. So, we would prefer not to make any more changes except for at the intersection of Central Avenue, where we have some striping changes that we'd like to see. We got a request from the Bicycle Advisory Committee to look at a flashing crossing device at Polk, so it would be easier for pedestrians or cyclists to get across the intersection where the bike boulevard tees into the trail. So, we'll be evaluating that in the next couple of weeks. But for the most part, what you see here is what we'll be bringing forward through to final design. There are some slight striping and signing, like wayfinding signing modifications that we'd probably expect in final design as well.
I do have a photo of a raised ped crossing for people to see if they're interested. It's slightly different than what we'd put here in terms of the colored marking, but I could share that if people are interested.
Sure.
I didn't catch if there was another question. I apologize if I stepping on someone's question. Did it work? I think someone has to stop sharing for it to.
I think we can see it, Heather.
Oh, you can see it? Share.
Thank you.
So you can see it? Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, so it's that even as Forrest was describing, so there's not a ramping down and a ramping back up for people on the trail in those locations. And then there's that gradual, not really speed hump, but it's more of a speed, it's almost like tabling the motorist, and then it's flush across here straight, and then it angles back down. So that's generally what it looks like. The difference here would be how you see the red in between. That would be just the normal kind of gray concrete color in this situation. But this is what it generally looks like at at a location. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who do I have to talk to if I want to get one of those flashing light things put on to cross St. Anthony Boulevard at the bottom of the hill before it gets to Central?
St. Anthony Boulevard, likely talk to the park board, but you can always file a 311 request with the city and it'll probably get to the right place.
All right, cool, great. All right, any other questions?
I
Yeah,
have one more. How is the crossings? I appreciate that they were added to get to the Minneapolis, like our side to the other side. I know that was a concern that I brought up before when we were talking about south versus north side. But how are those maintained in the winter? So like, does either the city clear the path where there's a median for pedestrian protection, like you said, in the winter?
Yeah, so the city of Minneapolis has agreed to maintain those in the winter, and they'll likely be done with special equipment like a Bobcat or something like that.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you all for your time. That was very
Thank you.
informative and in-depth.
Yeah.
Thank you.